my name is Margaret. Stewart, it was O'Mara before I was married, and my first Red Cross man said, Margaret O'Mara, no, we're not going to call you that, we're going to call you Peggy. So that's how I became Peggy O'Mara. My first group was at a place called Hardwick, and it was in East Anglia, and it was the 93rd Bomb Group. After that, it was B-24s. Then I went to a place called Deetham Green, and that was with 17s. And, there's quite a rivalry between the B-24s and the 17s. And of course, I was loyal to the 24s, and when the boys would see the 24s going over the baby 17 fellows, they'd take their hats off, and they would put them over their hearts, and they'd look up and they'd say, we hope that they make it. And of course, I would say, you bet they'll make it more than you would. Anyway, there was a nice rivalry. We were just friends.
How old were you when you joined?
Quite old, 27.
And why did you enter the war service?
I was teaching school in Short Hills, New Jersey, and I was making bandages, and I thought, well, maybe I should do more, and I heard about the Red Cross. So I had my interview in New York and was able to join. But Mother had come from Ireland, and she kind of worried about me, and she had come over by ship, of course, and so I said, she was on the couch, and I said, Mother, I'm joining the Red Cross, and she said, fine. And I said, but I'm going overseas. She jumped up and she said, oh no, and I said, yes. And she said, well, there's one thing I must tell you, and that is, the only warning, she said, don't lean over in the ship because they'll never pick you up. It's the only warning I had.
What did your friends and your co-workers, if you were working at the time, think about your joining and going overseas?
They thought it was wonderful. They wished some of them had families and all were married, and I wasn't. And they thought it was wonderful. They were very, very cooperative, and they wished me well. And
when did you go overseas, and what was your trip like?
Went over in 1944. We went to New York, and we were warned not to call our parents, no telephone calls, and we felt that there were spies around us, German spies, of course, and we weren't to talk about anything. Well, I did want to call my parents, but being brought up to obey rules, I didn't. And then we went in a convoy, many, many ships, and they were all camouflaged, of course. And I guess I was the shortest one, and the people in the ship, the soldiers and all, kind of not picked on me, but very nicely. They'd say, well, now, when we go overboard, when we're torpedoed, we said, we're going to look out for you because the other girls can look out for themselves. But we had to, in case with our drills, we had little lights on, our light preservers. And so they said, now, watch out, because when you get in the water, somebody might trick you and turn your light off, and we'll never find you if it's nighttime. Anyway, we had fun. We were indoctrinated that we were there so that to help the boys, and they would think that they were home. We were the Americans, and when we got overseas, we tried to have programs so that they wouldn't go into the pubs and go around with.
Is that what your training had been back in the States?
Yes,
consisted
yes.
of...
We were like the USO overseas in the Red Cross, and it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. Every man there was a hero. And if you were an old witch, the boys treated you like you were a movie star. In fact, you could just have to keep your head once in a while because, look, you're just a common little girl, but they were wonderful to us.
Describe what it was like on a daily basis as you worked with the Red Cross at these different bases.
All right. We usually, well, there were two girls at base. I happened to be, as you go in first, you were an assistant director. And you always had a girl who was over you when you first went in. And we would take turns. One would work in the morning, and then we both work in the afternoon, and we both worked at night. Then the next week, one would change places, and the other one who worked in the morning would take the morning off. And that's the way we did it. What we did mostly was to set up programs. We had English girls come into dances, we had snooker clubs, we had ping pong teams, and I shouldn't tell you, but I love ping pong and tennis. And so when a fellow was going out on a flight the next day, and he couldn't go, I would I would take his place. And may I tell you some experience we had? We used to go in a little covered Jeep, and I used to sit in back with the boys and pep them out. Now we're going to beat these guys. We go to different bases. And so I was in there, and they'd say, don't wear your uniform. Wear something that our wives wear back home, so we know we've been there here so long. So I always wore just an ordinary dress, maybe a skirt and blouse or something. So I was with the boys one time, and I was saying, now you guys, we're going to beat these fellas because they beat us last time. We were at the gate, and someone said, halt! He came around, he said, you got to lie me in here. So he said, where are you from? I said, I'm from New Jersey. Oh, he said, a limey could never say it like this. I said, I'm the Red Cross girl. So the guy said, don't ever talk again. We'll go to the base and you keep your mouth shut, and then we'll get in. Anyway, so we did beat, and then when I had to take their place, oh, they just treated you royally. Even the other team would cheer for the girl because you had all men on the team, and then I would be the only girl, and they'd whistle and everything. You had to keep your head on tight, or you'd just think you were something you shouldn't be.
As you were with the 93rd Bomb Group, what do you recall about the men and the missions and the things that were going on during the base, at the base?
Here's where I break down. Want to cut it? I told you that.
How many months were you with the 93rd?
I was there almost a year, and then I went to the B-17s, and then I went into a depot, and those guys had been in combat, of course, on the ground, and they were, what do we call it when they had been in combat, and they were not quite normal yet, and they'd hear a
Combat fatigue.
Yes, and they would dive down when they'd hear a backfire of a truck. They'd, here I go again.
What was the camaraderie between you and the other Red Cross workers there?
You mean on the same base or other bases?
Both.
Both.
Okay, we got along fine. There was one girl we weren't very proud of, and I wish that she had gone home because she gave us or the girls, a bad reputation. We couldn't do anything about it. Other girls were fine. We would call each other and set up dates for our ping pong teams or our snooker teams. And we also, of course, had dances for the boys. From the girls would come in, and sometimes, you know, we had, maybe I shouldn't tell you this. Maybe you better cut it and then I'll tell you. Did Cal tell you he was with Jimmy Stewart? Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good. Well, when they had dances, if the girls even swooned near him, he would just disappear. You know, no, we just said Colonel Stewart, but that was it, and treated him no differently. But Cal had the same office as Jimmy Stewart. They say their desks were together, and you better cut it because I played a joke on Jimmy Stewart that was terrible, and I told him 25 years later, maybe. You can tell I'm Irish. I used to go in the kitchen with the boys or go down the line and visit with those guys, so they were wonderful, wonderful guys. So I went in the kitchen one time, the fellows were cutting up turkeys, and they had the feet. And I said, what are you going to do with those feet? We're pitching them out. I said, I want one. So I took a turkey's foot, and I went over. Cal was at another base with Jimmy Stewart, and I was invited over there that night. So I took the chicken's foot, and I said to the boys in the kitchen, now you serve this to him as dessert. But said, don't say anything. And they said, oh, we'll dress it up and everything. So Major Alba was sitting next to him, and they were talking. I kept my eye open for the dessert, and the boys brought it in, and Jimmy Stewart was talking like this, and they all had little cakes, and he went, ooh, and like this. He said, Albie, I know that you did this. Albie said, I didn't. Yes, he said, I did. When the Strategic Air Command picture the premiere showing was in Omaha, we were invited. It was very nice of them, and all the big shots, June Allison was there, and Jimmy Stewart and all, and of course, we had a reunion with Jimmy Stewart. So I looked at him, I said, I think he was a general then. I said, General, I have a confession to make. Well, he said, what's that? I said, remember that, it was a turkey's foot, not a chicken foot. I said, yes, he said, Albie did that. I said, no, I did it. So I kept that secret for a long time.
What was his response to that?
Oh, laughed. He laughed. It was great. And oh, but then I took it back and took it to my base, and our priest was a good friend of ours, and I happened to go. I had the foot in my in my pocket, and I saw his hat up in the officers' club, one of the hats like that, and I thought, by George, this is going to do one more thing, then I'll throw it out. I opened his hat and had a big pin, and I pinned the foot in there, and went and sat right next to him, and how do you do, Father, and was very serious, and he had finished his meal, and he said, do you mind if I go? I have an appointment. Fine, Father. All of a sudden, I heard something. And he had a bald head, and the foot came right down on the head. He said, there's only one person in this base that would do that. I said, give it to me, Father, it's going to be thrown away. Anyway.
Did you find the servicemen relying on you to discuss the problems at all?
Oh, yes. One wanted to go AWOL. You know, you had to get their confidence first. You know, when you're the only girl there with I don't know how many men, they have to size you up. And they knew that I was a church-going girl. I think they knew that I was there to serve them and not to fool around, and I'm proud to say that. And so when they would get your confidence, they would come. One was very sad. He came to me, and I told him to go to the chaplain. He said, well, I've been there, but he said, I want to talk to you because maybe you can understand it. He said, I got a Dear John letter. You know what a Dear John letter is? Okay. And he said, I am going AWOL. And I tried to talk to him, and he happened to be the same religion that I was. And I said, I want you to pray as hard as you can, because I said, if you go AWOL, this is going to follow you for your whole life. And you see, that was in Germany, and I wasn't as intimate with those fellas as if you lived on the base. These fellas lived off the base. I was in Fürth, Germany, and we were in the town, and the Red Cross girls just lived there. Well, the men came from all over. See, they lived out in towns and everything. They came into the Red Cross, like in London. There was the Red Cross there. These men came from all over. Well, it was the same in Germany, where I was at Fürth, Germany, yes. And so anyway, I kind of lost track of him, but I just begged of him not to do it because his whole life, but he was just devastated. And that was one of the things. I can't recall too much. That was the most devastating that I could remember.
When were you assigned to Germany, and for how long were you there?
I was there, not about a half a year. I was at Ettlingen and then Nuremberg. And I was invited to the trials in Nuremberg, but I'd have to put on a secretary's uniform and wing it. I mean, I was not, I was Red Cross, and I got scared to death. I said I just couldn't do that, because when I'd walk in the place, they could look at my face and see that I was not, I'd be guilty. I'd have a guilty look on my face, but I did go in there, not during the trials, and visited, and I saw Goring pacing up and down in the courtyard. That's about all. I just couldn't do that. If I couldn't go in as an American Red Cross girl, I didn't want to do it.
What was it like in Germany at that time as you looked around the countryside and viewed the people and so forth?
Oh, the cities were just devastated. You could even smell bodies. I had a little German boy just spit at me. And, here I go again. I couldn't, I knew that we weren't supposed to talk to them. And I would try to go to daily mass. And there was a little German man in there praying. And I had some candy. You better cut it.
How long were you in Germany?
I just wanted to, I gave him some candy. And we just, because they had nothing. I was in Germany, very poor at remembering things. I don't know, 6 months or something like that.
Was that your final tour?
Yes, yes. And then I came back, and Cal's from Nebraska and I'm from New Jersey. We were married in New Jersey, and then he came out to look for a newspaper because he was Nebraskan. It's his field, and so we found a little one in O'Neill, Nebraska, a little Irish town, and it was General John O'Neill, who wanted to take Canada away from the British, and he just took a few men up there, and of course he was defeated, but he lived in O'Neill, Nebraska, and so they named the town after him.
Going back a little bit to when you were with the 93rd, how were you able to adjust your own life and not become undermined by the problems of the men that...
I always had a good attitude about things. I always looked at the good side. There was always a good side to everything. And, but I'm going to tell you, I was raised with girls, 4 sisters actually, one much younger. And when I went there first, I went into the office, and the director, a lovely girl by the name of Rachel Homer, said, now you're supposed to go into the snack bar and talk to these fellas. Oh, I said, I can't do that. I said, I'm scared to death. She said, well, that's your job. So I entered, and I saw the first vacant seat, and I just sat down and kept my eyes, and of course the boys whistled. I told you, they were so glad to see an American. And I had glasses that, the popular ones that went like this, and some came up and they said, you mean to tell me that our wives are wearing glasses like that? I said, yo, they're very popular. And it was kind of fun, but I was scared to death. I didn't know how to say hello to boys. I mean, that's really true. Anyway. They were wonderful when they come. See, we served refreshments to them when they come down from their bombings. We had a place set up, and their hands would be shaking. And here I go.
What would you say is your most outstanding memory of your tour?
The bravery of the boys. Bravery, wonderful. They knew that they wouldn't be coming back perhaps the next day. But they went out and they fought. That's about it.
Well, we know what you did in the war. What do you think the war did for you?
First of all, I met my husband. And I hope that I contributed a little bit. It's hard to say because I benefited a great deal from it. My experience, I was just a little school teacher, taught in practically the same town that I was brought up in, hadn't traveled very much, and my horizons were broadened. And I love people all the time. My life, I've always liked, no matter who you were, and this is the town that I'm living in now, we don't care who you are, it's what counts inside. We have no religious bias. Really, most of us don't. We don't care what you do, what your name is, where you came from. If you're a good person, we all get along. And that, to me, is more important in life. And I've learned that also from my husband. I really have. In the East, you're a little bit prejudiced. You don't mean to be. But in Nebraska, there's not too much prejudice against people. And he is in Nebraska. And I learned that.
Is there any other incident or event or tour that you would like to talk about that we may have missed?
Well, there is one, but maybe you won't know. I mean, this is kind of religious, but you remember Teresa Newman, the one that had the marks of Christ? Yes. All right, I was in Fürth, Germany, and a priest came to me and asked me if I'd like to take a group of soldiers there, and I said, of course I would. And so we got together, we had signed up, and it was in a little place up near Czechoslovakia. We went in a big covered truck, and I sat in front with the driver trying to help him. And we had such precarious roads that you could just look down. I was afraid the truck would just slide off. We could hardly find it. We almost gave up. And finally we found this little dear village with a horse trough in the middle. We pulled up, and their little German kids hadn't seen any Americans. We brought candy for them. They jumped. I didn't bring those pictures because I didn't know whether you wanted it. It was religion. And so we went to the priest's house, who talked, Father Neighbor, who talked English. And Teresa Newman was out in the field working, so they sent word she'd come in. And she had a white thing covering her hair and just a black outfit. She looked like a nun, but she wasn't. She did not speak English. And so she did not go through the Passion of Christ that time. But we saw the marks, and the boys took pictures. I have pictures of her. And so then she said, through the interpreter, she said, would you do me a favor? And we said, yes. She said, we have 2 women who walked from Nuremberg, which was right next to Fürth, walked I don't know how many miles it was, way the Czechoslovakian border, walked up to see Teresa Neumann, I think they call it. And she said, would you give them a ride back? There was you could just be absolutely kicked out. And I went to there was a lawyer with us from Minneapolis, and I said, Joe, what are we going to do? He said, that decision is yours. I said, we'll hide them in the truck. And we covered them, and they were in the back of the truck, and we took them. And of course, it was dark, and we left them off in Nuremberg. We did it. So before we left, she said, I have something for you. She gave me a holy picture with her, 2 holy pictures with her signature on it. So that was something. And that was, to me, as my religion, a Catholic, it meant a lot to me. That was awesome.
What one moment stands out through your entire war experience as being the most memorable?
Let me see, I can't remember where I was at D-Day. Yes, I was at Hardwick. The preparation was, we knew something was going on, and of course, people sensed it, but I didn't. I hadn't been over there too long. We weren't allowed to leave the base. We knew something big was coming, but we never knew that it was that big. That's just one of them. I probably can't recall everything, but that's about it.
What was the feeling on the base after D-Day?
Exuberant. Oh, you know what kind of a person I am. We were so happy that I happened to be down the line at the control tower. I was up there with them, and we heard the word. And you know, the Veery guns are to be shot from the planes when there's injured on there. As they're coming in from their bombing, they would shoot the Veery guns, and that meant everybody else stay away. We have to land first because we've got injured. Well, we had Veery guns up there, and we were shooting them right and left over the Tannhäuses, and they said, that will cease. So we dropped the guns, and that was kind of...
What do you want the world and history to remember about your contribution to the war effort?
Mine wasn't too much. I think more about the boys. Everyone was a hero. Everyone. Did just as much as the flyers. Even in the office, they did their part because that's what they were sent over for. And they were wonderful boys. This is in at the 93rd Bomb Group, down on the line, and I rode down on my bicycle, and the fellows wanted to take my picture near a plane, and that's it. All right, this is at Hardwick, and I've always liked art, and I used to do a lot of posters, but I didn't want to be inside. I wanted to be out in the sun, and so this was my little workshop. I'd take the boys had set me up with the card table and bring out my supplies, and one happened to be going by and took my picture. This is at the 93rd Bomb Group at Hardwick, England, and this was a big celebration. They had completed 200 bombing runs, and they had a celebration. They had a cake, and this was the picture that was taken. I was able to cut the cake for them, or they asked me to, and all the people that were connected with the bombings came, and we had a big celebration. This was a visit down the line where the mechanics were, and I'm really not sure whether it was Hardwick or Deetham Green, but anyway, as you went down there, we would gather, and the boys would ask about home and letters and so forth, and someone took a picture. This is when I first landed. Of course, they had all equipment, the helmet, the gas mask, the big sack that we had everything in, and one of the fellows saw me and he said, well, we've got to take a picture of this. And that was it. All right, this is a picture of my husband, and with our best man. His name was Edgar Thomas from North Carolina, and he was the PR officer at Old Buckingham.
The name of your husband?
Carroll Stewart. This picture was at one of the dances, and this is my husband, Carroll Stewart, and myself. All right, this is a picture in East Harling, England, with the kitchen staff. This was not with the Air Force. This was the depot.
Are you in that picture?
Yes, I am in the front, the second from the left.
Second
Well,
from the right.
Oh, for right as you're looking at it, absolutely. All right, this is my husband, Carroll Stewart, known as Cal. This is a picture of Major Alba on the left, and from New York, and my husband on the right. All right, this picture shows the airmen probably after a run, and Cal is in the middle congratulating the flyers. As you can see, this is a group of officers in the same unit, and Cal is in the bottom on the right. This shows Cal with an issue of Yank magazine. During the war in the European theater, he saved every issue of Yank magazine, and now one of his enterprises is to reprint Yank magazine. He has them in volumes, and he also has them in different kinds of sets. This is the way letters were sent. You wrote a letter, this happened to be to my parents, and a picture was taken, and we called it V-mail. And I think some of them were censored, but I don't remember any of ours. You see, the Red Cross girls were officers immediately. We were considered, if we were captured, we were considered lieutenants. And I don't believe that ours were censored. I don't believe that was. All right, this is a pamphlet that we got when we first arrived in Great Britain. There were certain no-nos in there, certain words you didn't dare use, and then also about to acquaint you with their customs and a bit about the geography and certain important points of Great Britain. This was an account of my landing in France, July 14th, 1945, at Le Havre. This was Bastille Day, and the Americans didn't know very much about Bastille Day. It was a wonderful day. Everybody was in the streets kissing the Americans. It was one of the greatest festivities that I've ever seen in my life. It's a great celebration. All right, this picture is of 4 New Jersey girls taken for the New York Star Ledger, of the girls who enlisted in the Red Cross at the same time. We all went overseas together. This is a certificate that I received after having served in the American Red Cross in Europe and in Europe. These are the 3 Red Cross girls stationed in Fürth, Germany. I am on the right. Sybil Householder from Iowa is in the middle, and Joe Kimmel from Oregon is on the right. This is the 93rd Bomb Group, the traveling circus, and this was put out by Lieutenant Colonel Brown, who was a commanding officer, and it was a celebration of VE Day and the 391st bombing mission. They had all sorts of activities, including a track meet. This was another track meet that the 93rd Bomb Group had. All sorts of events.